The woman with large, captivating eyes is actually a humanoid queen wasp who can control tens of thousands of wasps. On a nearby tram, a beautiful woman boards this ride of death. A suspicious man follows closely behind her, clutching his backpack nervously. Midway through the ride, he suddenly opens his bag, startling the woman who thinks he's about to set off a bomb. But it's just a speaker, and soon all the passengers start dancing involuntarily. Even the driver is helpless. However, when everyone gets off, the driver finds the woman lying motionless on the floor. The police arrive quickly and discover she died from anaphylactic shock, caused by wasp venom. The forensic report reveals nearly 500 grams of venom in her body, an amount that would require countless wasps to produce. Nick starts investigating the tram passengers and notices a man trying too hard to appear calm. When Nick demands to check his phone, the man's arm suddenly sprouts wasp stingers. Just then, Old White calls Nick outside. The suspect in the interrogation room transforms into a wasp creature, and outside, another man reveals his true form. The two seem to be communicating something. To avoid alerting them, Nick lets them go and secretly follows them to an abandoned paper factory, where they are seen whispering with a woman. Suddenly, a wasp flies by, followed by a swarm attacking. The trio scatters, and Nick and Old White barely escape into a glass room. That night, Nick searches his aunt's ancient texts and finds records of a grim creature called Wind Monster, whose natural enemy is a witch. He immediately recalls the shape-shifting woman from earlier and calls Uncle Wolf for help. Uncle Wolf, once a blood werewolf among grim creatures, became Nick's informant after being subdued. They revisit the factory, where Uncle Wolf's keen sense of smell detects the presence of the wasp creature. In a pile of letters, Nick finds the factory owner's name, Melissa, and tracks her address. At her residence, they discover piles of dead bees and an entire room filled with hives. Melissa is clearly the humanoid wasp queen. The police quickly secure the area and uncover that a year ago, a group of lawyers, led by 3 witches, maliciously acquired the factory, causing its bankruptcy. Melissa likely sought revenge, and the tram victim was one of those lawyers. Just then, they receive reports of another similar murder in the park. Rushing to the scene, they find the victim in the same horrific state. She was also one of the lawyers. Nick realizes the last lawyer needs protection. The witches admit to the acquisition, but soon face Melissa's wrath as she releases thousands of wasps to hunt them down. Nick and his team are attacked, and when he returns to the living room, the witches have disappeared. He follows their trail to the basement, finding it swarming with wasps. Melissa, upon seeing Nick, withdraws the swarm, unwilling to fight a grim heir but determined to exact revenge on the witches. A fierce battle erupts as they both reveal their true forms. However, the witch is no match for Melissa. Old White arrives just as Melissa turns to attack him, forcing Nick to pull the trigger. At that moment, the witch smiles eerily. This sense of letting go gave the girl an unprecedented feeling of relaxation. Just then, a roadside Ultraman figure caught her attention. As she picked it up to examine it, the police arrived at the scene, only to find her dismembered remains. The wound suggested an attack by some wild beast, but strangely, human blood traces were found under the leaves. Nick discovered the girl's radio in the bushes, still playing her favorite song. They decided to return to the station to regroup. On the way back, Nick witnessed a bizarre scene. A blonde woman holding a sprite suddenly transformed into a fanged monster. Realizing she was exposed, she quickly disappeared into the crowd. Nick was left bewildered, feeling like 1,000 llamas were stampeding through his mind. But the strange occurrences didn't stop. At the station, he saw a petty thief morph into a snarling creature. Was he hallucinating just because he missed a dose of his medicine? That night, Nick's gravely ill aunt showed up at his home, saying she had something important to tell him. They went to a secluded road, where she revealed she didn't have much time left and had come to pass on the family secret. She asked if Nick had been seeing strange things lately, and his expression confirmed her suspicions. Before he could process it, his aunt realized they were being followed. She swiftly drew her weapon as a monster with a scythe leaped out from the shadows. Even with their combined efforts, they were no match. In a crucial moment, Nick fired multiple shots, finally taking the creature down. Shockingly, the beast's once monstrous face reverted to human form. With her last ounce of strength, his aunt handed him a necklace, urging him to keep it safe before losing consciousness. After waking up in the hospital, she finally revealed the truth. Nick was one of the last surviving descendants of the Grimm family, capable of seeing things invisible to others. When these creatures lose control, he can perceive their true forms. She told him that everything he needed was in her RV. Leaving the hospital, Nick found that the item she gave him was an ancient key. He drove to the RV and discovered an arsenal of weapons inside. On the desk, he found an old journal filled with sketches and descriptions of creatures, identical to the ones he had seen earlier that day. It was all too incredible to believe. A man wearing a hat encountered a little girl in a red dress on the street. As they passed each other, he quietly turned around and followed her. Not long after, the girl's family reported her missing. Nick and White began their investigation in the nearby forest. They soon found the girl's backpack and a trail of footprints leading deeper into the woods. Following them into the night, they came across a small cabin. A refined-looking man opened the door. White identified himself, and the man cooperated, inviting them inside while humming a tune as he walked into the kitchen. However, they found no suspicious clues in the house and left disappointed. As they walked away, White suddenly realized something. The tune the man was humming matched the song playing on the missing girl's radio. When Nick turned back, the nervous man hurriedly pulled down the curtains, raising their suspicions. They re-entered the cabin to investigate, but before they could react, a wolf-headed creature suddenly attacked, sending them flying with its immense strength before fleeing into the forest. White immediately fired and hit the beast, which reverted to human form upon death. Eventually, they found the missing girl hidden beneath the cabin floor. A delicious pig's trotter was simmering in the pressure cooker. The man scratched the soup from between his toes to taste it, feeling it needed more seasoning, so he added some. This man wasn't human. He was a flesh-eating monster straight out of Grimm's fairy tales. 7 years ago, he and his brother hunted humans, but during one hunt, his brother was killed, and he barely escaped. Sam, the man who fought back, was arrested as a murderer. No one believed his story about monsters eating people. 7 years later, while reading the news about Sam's impending execution, Wu realized something was off and told Nick. Sam had been investigating his own attack for years. As a Grimm descendant, Nick sensed things weren't so simple. With only 36 hours left before the execution, they found Sam's former lawyer, who remembered the case well. Sam had described bizarre details and even drawn pictures of the monster, which led the judge to believe he was insane. Nick consulted his aunt's ancient texts and found records matching Sam's descriptions. The creature, known as a flesh-eater, emitted a foul stench when transformed and lured victims to its lair to feast on them, hiding the bones beneath its home. Realizing Sam might have acted in self-defense, they rushed to the prison to speak with him. Years of being treated as a lunatic left Sam hopeless, but when Nick mentioned the monster's stench, Sam finally believed them. He recalled fixing their pipes when they transformed, forcing him to shoot in panic. After multiple confirmations, Nick was certain they were dealing with a flesh-eater. They needed hard evidence to reopen Sam's case. Knowing the creature hid bones under its lair, they rushed to the crime scene, only to find it had been turned into a supermarket. With no time for a warrant, their only hope was to find a survivor, Sean, who moved away after the incident and now worked at a lumberyard. The next day, they found Sean, but he refused to talk. Wu showed him a drawing of the flesh-eater and provoked him until he lost his temper and revealed his true form. Nick saw it clearly. Sam had told the truth. Now they just needed the hidden remains to clear his name. That night, they sneaked into Sean's place and found a tunnel entrance under the fridge. The cunning flesh-eater had dug deeper passages underground. As they opened the hatch, the overwhelming stench nearly suffocated them. Inside were rotting human remains. Wu crawled out to call for backup, but the flesh-eater attacked him, revealing its monstrous form and fighting Wu. Nick, just emerging, was knocked back into the hole by the fridge. Wu finally shot and killed the monster, freeing Nick. As Wu stepped outside to call for help, the flesh-eater returned for one last attack on Nick, but didn't expect to face a Grimm hunter. Realizing he couldn't win, the monster tried to escape through the window but was met by Wu's bullets outside. With several shots, the creature was finally eliminated. Police later uncovered a mass grave beneath the supermarket, and Sam's case was reopened.